The Apostle is a movie you may not have heard of, but in our Robert Duvall arc here, it presents a really unique take on the American South. This is particularly fascinating because it was written by Robert Duvall, it was directed by Robert Duvall, and it stars Robert Duvall. And we're talking about Robert Duvall because unfortunately he passed away recently, but is one of the great character actors in American cinema. This is an arc that features many films that I had not seen any of these films, to be clear.
No, most of them I hadn't seen, yeah.
These are definitely not Robert Duvall's most famous films, let's put it that way. And this one in particular, though, was selected because it is his entire vision. And it's a film that he wanted to get made, struggled to get made, delivers a brilliant performance in. So, Richard, why did you select this film?
I wanted to bring The Apostle to the table simply because I think it is Robert Duvall's best performance. And I think when you factor in the fact that he wrote and directed it as well, it really will underline to anybody that maybe didn't know about Robert Duvall's talents. This is it laid bare. I think it's a fascinating film as well because you very often, you know, in the era of the Righteous Gemstones, you don't really get a lot of looks at religion in the South and with a pure and empathetic heart. A lot of it, I mean, listen, it's America where, you know, the dark side of the American dream is abuse of power will get you what you want in any field. And therefore, you know, you will get these evangelical characters that exploit the faith of people so they can have a private jet. But this isn't a movie about that. This is a movie about faith and how it brings people together and how the church is more than a place to just go and express your faith or as a preacher to proselytize. It's about community. It's about bringing people together. And it plays it down the middle with that. There's no bait and switch. You know, whatever you want to say about the character Robert Duvall plays in this, he's a fucking true believer. Very flawed guy, but a true believer. And that to me is why I think it's a fascinating movie, because Hollywood doesn't let the South have anything really. And this is from a time actually when you had movies like this and Sling Blade by Billy Bob Thornton, where the briefest, and you probably A Time to Kill as well. You know, you probably had this brief window where people were looking at the South with like fresh eyes and realized that these communities weren't just hillbillies and hicks and racists, that they were fully formed communities with their own identity and just honest to goodness people, you know. And it's like we've kind of gone back the other way now, where every you know person in the South is a racist Republican. We have to believe in that boogeyman. It's not true. I've lived in the South. I've experienced it. I've been down to places like this. I've seen the churches, you know, and I found everybody to be welcoming and wonderful and warm. And if you're hungry, they feed you. If you're thirsty, they give you a cup of sweet tea. Southern hospitality is a real thing. And so you combine all of that together in my mind, and I think this is an important film for people to see. And I think it's what a wonderful tribute to Robert Duvall. I almost wish we'd done this last because I'm not so sure the other films on the list might reach the heights. But if you had to watch one Robert Duvall film that wasn't like a cameo or a character piece, it's absolutely this.
By the way, I think in both regards as well, here's one thing I wasn't used to. My own actual, like, pattern recognition of Hollywood films and or, like, just how you expect, like, what sort of person would write a Hollywood film. Normally, you would expect on either front, either the fact it's about Christianity, evangelism as well, by the way, of all of them, or about the South, that it would come with some, like, cynical, like, oh, I'm going to like lampoon how silly they are, and I'm obviously faking all this. No, if anything, I agree with what you said there, Richard. One of the most brilliant things about this film is, first of all, it doesn't actually have like a telegraphed plot that you can know where it's going. I think you'll actually have a very hard time guessing where this movie's going and what, like, but it'll take you a while to sort of figure out what the core of the movie is. Because if you watch the beginning part, the first hour could be a movie by some like coastal elite person who's like an atheist or of a different religion who just thinks that this is all like for country bumpkins and they're all idiots. No, actually, what's beautiful I thought about this film is simultaneously they show you through all the scenes where the guy's on his own or talking to himself, like he clearly believes all this shit. Like it's actually treated completely straight up in a very earnest way as well. And even though I agree, Richard, it shows he is clearly a flawed person. There are times in the movie he like partially lies or does things that are like duplicitous, but it's you can tell he's doing it along those lines that where like essentially he thinks that's justified because it's real, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah,
he's sort of like helping God get along, as it were, and solve little issues. And I'll give you an example, actually. What I actually think shows the heart of this film is really earnest and honest, which is actually the Billy Bob Thornton cameo.
Yes.
Because if you see the first part of that, it's just a traditional enemy of like a guy doesn't like this church, and he has to even beats him up on the grass. When he comes back later, again, I buy that that's like both things at the same time. Yeah, obviously it's a way to get out of the issue of him destroying the church, but it also does seem like it's a real legitimate, like he's helping this guy have like a conversion, and it's showing that even what would be a traditional like cardboard villain of like, here's the guy who's against you. The idea is it's showing like, put it this way, this movie actually makes me think Duvall at a very minimum must have like a great respect for religion, if not he was like low-key religious himself, because it's showing like what the whole movie is almost about how people are flawed, but the value that like religion plays in their life, but not in a, as you say, not in just the pasta collection plate, I want a new yacht with. There's that as well, but I think part of that also is because for other people it is real like this. Like that's why that territory is available for predators to come into. I actually thought that was even the best part of the movie. Like at the end, by the way, I even kept thinking, why is he like delaying this getaway? Is this going to be like, you know, some fucking Rocky shit, or like, you know, escape to victory? Are they going to like smuggle him? No, the whole point is like, that final scene sort of explains the movie. This guy was just like that in his whole life, bro. Wherever he was, that is where he was. That he was just doing his religious shit there, and then he knows, because he's obviously had like a checkered past. Like, right, time to move on to the next thing. In this case, prison. And then the best thing is, I hope people didn't turn off on the credits, because there's like, it's not like they would take a long time, but they immediately have a credit scene where he's preaching on the chain gang. Like, this guy for real just believes it, bro. Like, it's actually, there's something sweet about this film, isn't there? I kept thinking there was going to be a cynicism around any of there isn't. It's actually a really just honest film. It's fucking dope.
Yeah, agreed. Monty, are you about to undercut?
In fact, I'll give you one last thing as well. Here's one last morsel for you. If you are someone who's approaching this film and for whatever reason you bounce off some of the ideas and the bigger picture, here's what all I'll say for you. Here's how you can reset the filters. If instead of this being called The Apostle, and it's a film in the south of America where you might have all these preconceptions and prejudices, if instead what we did right now is we were going, it's like a insert name of trendy Asian, could be Korean or Japanese director, and we said they've got a beautiful film about Buddhism, about how some of the monks are actually like alcoholics, but at the same time they really believe in it, and they go into their community. You'd watch that and go, oh, it's incredible. Yeah, oh, the layering, they know. So don't just, because it's just some Christian stuff and the idea that like he is clearly a flawed person, by the way, don't just take the idea he's selfish to mean that the whole thing's like a fucking straw man. I actually thought this was a very developed film. That's one thing I liked about it. A lot of depth to a lot of the characters. In fact, even the ones that looked like they were going to be the one-note characters tend to have more to them. Even the Walter Goggins thing, I was going to say in the movie, like, he barely gets a chance to act, does he? He does by the end.
Yeah.
He goes through the whole fucking gamut, doesn't he?
Gets a great scene.
Walton Goggins too. It's funny to see him so young.
I know, it's weird, isn't it?
People
That's
these
why
days,
I didn't tell you he was in it, because I wanted you to be genuinely shocked when he turned up.
Yeah, sure.
No, I was watching it with my wife, and she's like, "Who's that?" I said, "It's
He's
Walton
so thin
Goggins.
as well,
He's
isn't
just
he?
really young." And she's like, "Holy shit!" So, and also, you guys, Walton Goggins has been pretty noticeable recently. I mean, he's always been an excellent actor, right? But because of The White Lotus and Fallout, and he's. Think what you will about both of those shows. His performances in both of them are excellent.
Oh, the best
on
ones,
an individual level. Like, he's the best part of Fallout, hands down. And if you haven't seen the scene in Fallout, it's him and Sam Rockwell, or for the scene in White Lotus, I think it's him and Sam Rockwell.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
If you haven't seen
Where
that
all
clip,
the memes came from.
with all the go watch it, because both of them are phenomenal. But anyway, I think this movie is really interesting, and I think it's very interesting to think about and discuss. And it's, I would say, deceptively simple. There's a lot of layers to the character in this, and I think that was excellent for Robert Duvall to write and think about and portray. My issues with this film come at the end, where I feel like it majorly over-eggs the pudding, and I was just kind of laughing at it by the end of the film. We'll get to what the end is, but I do want to talk briefly about just kind of the narrative arc here, because there's going to be a lot of people who kind of need a refresher. We don't always do the summary, but in this one, I think we can do it very quickly. And it is basically this. There's a guy, his nickname is Sonny. His real name is Ulysses F. Dewey. And the reason I bring that up is because it becomes a pseudonym later, so it is actually important. But everybody calls him Sonny, right? Mm-hmm. And he is a charismatic preacher. He does what you think of typically, I would say, as black preaching or African American style preaching. And it shows in the beginning of the film that indeed he was part of a black congregation growing up, or majority black congregation in the South, where he learned this style of preaching. And it's mentioned in the film where people said, oh, I heard you and I thought you were black, because of this would be much more in keeping with gospel style churches.
Not done like that scene in the Elvis movie, by the way. He's white. It's not done like that, guys.
No,
Don't
he's really
worry.
good.
It's just mentioned in passing, right?
Yeah, and it is a very compelling and theatrical version of preaching that brings people in. And it is, I would say, a uniquely American style of, my mother, for example, is a Presbyterian minister. So I am familiar with a much more, stoic, intellectual style of Christianity. And this is much more about the emotion and the experience and the kind of the
it's like whipping
call
yourself
and
up into a
response.
fever,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's vibes preaching.
Yeah,
it's vibes preaching. Yeah.
I mean, it's
vibes
even implied that when you start saying all the stuff really fast, you're not totally, it's almost stream of consciousness, isn't it? You're not totally controlling what you're saying, and you just hitting certain lines over and over again.
It's half a musical performance,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It's like rap or spoken word poetry, right? And so, this is the kind of preaching that he does. And he's in Texas, in Fort Worth, that we find out later on. And he has a wife, and his wife is cheating on him. She's having an affair with a younger minister who is a youth minister. He catches her in the act, and then he, asks, kind of in a very weird scene, and there's a lot of great and weird scenes in this film, asks her to pray with him instead of getting mad and tries to reconcile. She refuses him. We never get the information about what was the cause of their broken relationship, but I'm sure we're going to talk about that and infer what that could have been. So anyway, the relationship goes on. She basically ices him out of his own congregation, holds a secret vote where he's voted out as the minister of the church. So not only has he lost his marriage, lost his 2 kids, he's lost his job and his kind of meaning for his life, because he doesn't have much going on, as we find out, besides religion. And then he is at a baseball game, his children's baseball game, where his wife and the man she is cheating on him with are, and he gets into an argument, ends up hitting Horace, the other preacher, in the head with a baseball bat. Horace goes into a coma, later dies, and he goes on the lam. He flees to small town Louisiana and basically makes himself useful in this itty bitty southern town. And over time, slowly builds up a congregation, finds another retired preacher, and takes over an old church there, renovates it himself, becomes part of the fabric of this community, starts preaching on the radio, and slowly, builds up a new church that he's preaching in. The people love him. They enjoy the community he creates. He seems like he's making real inroads into the town. His then ex-wife hears him preaching on the radio, calls the police, says, this is where he is. The police come at the end and arrest him for homicide, because at this point, the man has died in the coma. So that's where the story comes from. It is very much...
spoiler, he's on a chain gang at the end. He's found guilty.
He's on a chain gang.
Still preaching. He's spelling out.
Yeah, Jesus did not help him beat the case. It's got to be said, to be fair. Just to make it clear. That would have sucked, by the way. Would have destroyed the whole movie if he got away with it.
That's not even the premise of the film to me. Like, if anything, this character, if he had another scene, would just explain, like, the Lord needed me to come here now to preach to you, gentlemen, and I'm going to make it in church inside the fucking prison or something.
Yeah, that other guy had to die just so I could preach
fascinating.
Jesus to you.
Like, don't you find that
souls.
an interesting detail too of the movie? That's another thing. Like I say, I've been on this trip recently because I've just realised I've seen so many films over my life that involve things like religion or magic power. But then whenever you watch it, it's obviously written by someone who doesn't believe those are real things. So they always have to put in the idea that even in secret, like, I'm secretly a fraud and even I do it, or the idea that they can't even conceive of the idea that it would work. Like, they'll be trying to like use physical evidence to show that like the demon didn't exist. Like, what would that even be? The reason this treats it as if it's real is because this character does have the vibe of like, wherever I am, I'm just supposed to be here to spread the word and to sort of connect. And also, isn't one of the coolest things, this is why it's a masterclass of acting, is it's the way that he's able to, almost like that famous thing from the Bible about like, I am everything to all men or whatever. Like the idea, whoever you meet them where they're at. He's amazing at that, this character.
Yes.
Like his charisma with every person he just meets is incredible. And he's got his own sort of like mythology, like a lot of these people do, of like, I'm being sent by the Lord to you to meet you for some reason. It's why actually I do take that thing with the Billy Bob Thornton guy at the end as like legit. Yeah, it started out on some fraught path, but like that sort of, in a weird way, the Billy Bob Thornton guy was also seeking out someone like him. It's kind of true.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think as one of the beautiful details about the film is, I mean, he quite explicitly says when he meets the other preacher, brother Blackwell, who was played by the coach in Rudy, right? Just the great John Beasley, passed away a couple of years ago, I think. He says, like, I don't know why I'm on the path I'm on. You know, Satan has pushed me. You know, Satan has come into my life many, many times, but I believe God has guided me here and guided me here to you. And because it's such a potentially, like, it's a very con artisty kind of thing to say. You know, the retired preacher is cynical initially. And he says to him, he says, listen, I'm going to keep my eye on you. You keep your eye out. You can keep your eye on me. And Jesus will keep our eye on both of us. And we'll all three of us will watch out for Satan, right?
I tell you what, I'm going to keep my eye on you. And the Lord will keep his eye on both of us. And we all three keep an eye out for the devil, all right?
and so it's this movie's full of great lines. And basically what they then do is they enter into a very, it's not fraught, but it's a stated, I am watching you. We've had con artists come this way before, using faith for profit, for personality. And honestly, you think this is where it's going. Like,
yeah, it looks like you're going to have the reveal in the last act, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it isn't. Sonny just loves to build churches. He loves him some Jesus. He loves spreading the word of Jesus. Wherever he goes, he wants to create a place where people can come together and worship the Lord. And he does it. And so obviously over time, I mean, you know, by the way, he proves himself as undeniable, like to all of the congregation, to this former preacher. It's just really nice that actually there isn't a rug pull.
No.
And obviously when he has to go at the end, I think in a way, even though he is a murderer and a womanizer and an implied wife beater, like, it's sad, but also it's like it's an essential component of the thought process of, you know, we're all sinners, but Jesus will forgive you and he will put you where you need to be in a moment in time. And so that post-title scene of him preaching on the chain gang, that is where he's meant to be.
Yeah.
And those are the men he's meant to be preaching to and redeeming. And again, there's no rug pull. I mean, I was a bit worried when he came out in that beautiful white suit to try and get his church back and win some votes. I was like, oh no, Sonny's going to be, you know, he's going to be
even that detail
bad
you're
guy.
saying. Like, obviously, if you're paying attention, you catch him in a lie very quickly, which is like halfway through the movie when he meets the black guy who's like the fishing guy, which is like the first part he meets in town. Well, obviously, that's where he got the info, didn't he, about the Blackwell person, right? But he didn't say that to the Blackwell person. He says, like, the Lord sent me here for a dream. Like, here's what's weird about that. Even though that is clearly a lie, you see it on camera, it is. Like, he should have just mentioned, I heard it from that. One, like, that's an example of where you have to understand that, like, religion interacts with mythology. So a lot of what he's doing actually is like mythologizing his own life and his own path to be this like religious experience, right? It's obviously how he processes what's going on. But then also, if you take it, look, obviously this is still a lie. If you take it in like an abstract sense, to him, that is God sending you to that person. Like, why else would I meet this random guy who's fishing on the side, talk to him, and suddenly within 5 minutes he's told me about a guy who seems like he needs a church and to start some up. Isn't that what I'm trying to do? And that's like God. Because remember, this is the reason I say, Monty, that I can tell when people don't even get they can't even model the concept of a religious person. Because you know the famous story where the guy dies, and he was in the water, and then he like goes to heaven, and he goes, Jesus, I prayed for you. Why didn't you save me? And he was like, what are you on about? I sent like 3 Coast Guards and a fucking boat. And the premise was he wanted like Jesus himself to materialize, come down and pick him out. It's like, no, if God existed in the way that it's claimed, he would send a physical thing to help you, wouldn't he? The idea would be he'd make like the lightning hit the tree and the thing come down, you grab onto it, or a boat would come back. That's almost what this movie's trying to embody, the idea that like there isn't, put it this way, there's no scene with an actual supernatural event happening here. But if you watch the movie, this is even why I'd say it's a cool character study. You completely get the vibe of why these people would get swept up into this and why it'd even be something you might, if you were in that congregation, want to be involved in. It seems fucking dope, bro. Like, he is like raising the consciousness in a way. He's getting people in on a vibe. Like, he's transporting them. So it's kind of like what's funny is I'm not even into like Christianity super bad, but I thought it was a pretty cool film. Actually, it captured a spirit about that was legit in a way where I know exactly. The problem is the whole time I was waiting, like, where's the secret? Like, it was, of course, that's not my real name. This is my secret. I know, even to the bitter end, this is real. Yeah.
Well, and I think to your point, you say like it's a lie. I'm not sure it is about the dream, because I think what's so interesting about Sonny's character and why this movie works on so many levels is because we're never quite sure of what Sonny's experiences are.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's
and
true.
so you know, he's sleeping out there, in that tent on that guy's land. Sure, the guy told him about it, but how the fuck do we know he didn't have a dream later about, you know, like, you don't know. Like, I don't know. The thing about Sonny as a character is that you never know what is a lie. In fact, you could level the accusation that his entire shtick as a minister, as a preacher, is a lie, because this is the tension of it. We find out, like you say, why is his wife breaking up with him? Mm-hmm. Well, there's a really fishy scene when she says that, where he moves and she flinches, and you're like,
yep.
Well, I have to think about that.
There's not a lot for you to think about, Sonny.
Yeah.
Just want to get on with it, and you just, you know, keep your hands where they are, okay? Don't.
What?
This probably isn't the first
Plus,
time.
I might be off on this, but didn't he, just from memory, didn't he say something like, didn't he make some like allusion to like my wandering eye or something?
Yes,
didn't he make some comment like that? Like, he just put it in passing.
It's when he's talking to the Lord and he's like saying, you know, I might have had a wandering eye and a taste for the women.
Because I took the sequence when he recapitulates the whole mini relationship with the other woman.
Yes.
I took that to mean like he's also got this charm with women too. And by the way, women are drawn to him as well. It's like a real thing.
He's an unbelievably, and this is what I mean. It's like you can stack up all of his sins, right? Like very clearly.
Yes.
And it's
that's what I'm saying. So let me continue. Like, you find out later in his conversation with this other woman that he is actually, he says himself, like, I'm a hot-blooded man, basically, and you know, these are things that I want. The implication is that he probably beat his wife previously. The implication is he probably cheated on his wife previously.
By the way, if you think how he reacted to the Horace guy, you could see he's a guy who on impulse could get violent.
Oh,
He didn't necessarily mean to do that, did he? Just smash
and
him
also
in the face with a baseball
he was
bat.
drunk. He's he's
true.
drunk when he rocks up and beats Horace with a baseball bat. But the fact that it was so cavalier too, like, he basically sucker punches Horace with a baseball bat. He's at his children's baseball game, and he's walking away, and then he just turns around.
By
and
the way, if you were
whacks him
someone
in
who
the
didn't
head.
watch the movie,
Y'all go ahead and play. I'm trying to break up the party here. Everybody come on now. Come on, let's go. Here, give me that. Don't call me. One for the road, Rodney. One for the road.
you're now going to be like, wait a minute, they like this. Yeah, I'm still in on the movie. Even after he hits, I'm in. I'm all the way involved.
So,
what are you talking about?
so my point is that,
already,
you know, he clearly has some level of a history of cheating, of domestic violence, of physical violence, which plays out even later with his other congregation where he's beating up Billy Bob Thornton. His character doesn't have a name in the movie, guys. It's just really, I mean, it is funny because it's just.
I know what you mean, but I also
Thornton.
took that to mean this guy's not just a fucking random guy. He's actually beat people before. He's probably had a hard life. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there's two ways you could, and probably he is the victim of abuse. Like, people turn out like this because they themselves were abused most of the time, right? And I think what's so interesting about his character is there's this tension. Okay, he clearly does bad things, but without preaching, without this outlet, he would be an even worse person.
Yeah.
Right? At least this is allowing him to potentially do some amount of good in the world. Should he still be in prison? Absolutely.
By the way, Monty, the most underrated detail I had to learn myself from experience about religion is this detail, right? Even if you think it's all fake, the thing you can't deny is the following. It is sometimes the only thing that turns otherwise very antisocial bad people into not as bad people. Now, notice,
it's got to be a total animal.
The way you cynically in a movie were presented as fake is they're not perfect. They lie.
Yes.
They do something not. No. The question, like you said, is this, Monty? Logically, here's how I would redo this movie if there was no religion in his will. He'd be a mega con man, bro. He has all the skills to do it. That's why you're so worried in the film with how charming he is.
Yes.
But it's way, even the way he's trying to, like, he's taken like what the teenage boy trying to get lucky after a date game to a whole new, like, advanced PhD class, bro, where he's doing it as a preacher while not seeming dodgy, but clearly trying to, like, advance one's base further as the Americans. It's nuts. Like, this guy's just got fucking crazy game. But I agree, Monty. At the end of the movie, if you made a plus minus, all the bad things he did on the minus side, and all the plus is overwhelmingly way better. If anything, it's actually like it's like an advert for religion, bro. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So like, I think that this there's the thing that you could say about this film, and there are multiple interpretations. And is he doing this as a mask for his bad behavior, or is this actually his salvation for a life that would be totally thrown away, that would be horrifically violent, where he would be an animal, basically, without this other outlet? And I think that's the issue with his character, is that he's so obsessed with this religion. He's so obsessed with doing these things because you can see he's trying to prevent himself from sliding into the darkness. And it's literally the only thing. So he has to focus on it 100% of the time. He has to, like, keep his mind locked on the preaching and locked on Jesus, because if he doesn't do that, he's just going to fall right back into whatever horrible habits came out of his past. And I think that's a fascinating way to present this character.
The opening scene sets the tone perfectly for me for who Sonny actually is, before you even get into the nuts and bolts of the things he's done. And that is, there's been like, so first of all, you get this, like, it's just a kid in a church listening to, classic Pentecostal gospel style preaching from an elderly black preacher. And then it cuts to, and by the way, just cuts because it's Duvall, and he's just like, I'll just make a borderline experimental movie for the first 30 minutes. Right?
And also, like, there's no explanation that that's him as a child.
So
you just have to, like, put it together after a few flashbacks.
It together, exactly. And many such cases, actually. And anyway, it cuts to a horrific fender bender. Like, there's been this horrific fender bender. There's a sports car wrapped around a tree. The police are on scene. And there's some grizzled old Southern police captains going, I always hate it when the dogs live because you can never tell what car they came from and all this shit. And anyway, Sonny and his elderly mother are driving down the road, and he immediately stops, gets out, gets his Bible, walks over to one of the car wrecks, puts his head through the window, and says, "You all right in there, son? You all right in there, son? Just nod if you can. If you can't nod, just blink. But if you can't do that either, just know I'm here with you. Know Jesus is in this car with you." And it's a guy who he's bolt upright with his eyes open. It's implied he could be paralyzed by the car accident.
Yeah.
And next to him is his girlfriend or wife or whoever it might be, and she's unconscious and bleeding from her head. And Sonny reaches across and, like, this is like an insane moment of tenderness, right? Given how inappropriate this situation is. He puts his wife's hand on his hand, and then he says, like, listen, right? The angels are around us now. Like, you're either going to go home or you're going to live your life out with Christ for the rest of your life. Do you accept Christ into your life? And I think a lot of people are going to take this scene and go, wow, it's so despicable. He would recruit somebody while they're vulnerable. But he's not doing it for recruitment.
No.
And how do we know that? He walks away. A police officer comes up to him and goes, "Do you think you achieved something today?" And he goes, "Well, just let me tell you, I'd rather die young and go straight to heaven with Jesus than live 100 years and go to hell." And the cop's like, "Oh, is that right?" And he goes, "Yeah, it is." And then he gets in the car, and him and his mother, as they drive away from the wreckage, they're singing and praying for that boy's life and to be saved.
And when I see you coming, I will rise up with a shout.
Praise God.
And
praise Him today.
Running through the shallow water, reaching for your hand.
So, okay, what do we now know about?
And he doesn't gain anything out of it, by the way. We never find out what happens.
Doesn't leave a business card.
By the way, isn't that even something?
Result.
I'm going to guess if you guys had a similar reaction to me. Every time he keeps reaching in, I think, is he reaching in for someone's wallet? And I kept thinking, is that what they're going to do right now? Because I agree, it's a weird scene, right? But also, there's a detail you forgot to mention, Richard. when he drives away by the power of movie magic, her hand moves.
Yes,
That's actually
correct,
beautiful.
correct.
Unironically, I thought that was kind of cool.
Key component, actually. You're right to include
it's
that.
kind of cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, and what we learn.
Surely that gives you a clue already. This isn't going to be like some super cynical movie. Why put that scene in otherwise? You
know? Well, how we know he's genuine is, and all the things we learn about him is, first of all, we know his faith is absolutely genuine. We also know he does genuinely care about people and believes that, all people can redeem and be saved by Christ. We also know that he will be inappropriate and over the top in his faith and in his love and in his desire to share the message. And so, because it is a weird thing to do. And we all feel that. We all feel that in the moment. But it does come from a good place and a pure place. And so, therefore, you have to balance it out. And this is ultimately where you're going to get into with this character, the complexity of a character. A heavy drinking Southern guy who you find out at the end is descended from a line of like hustlers and card sharks. But because of his introduction as a child to this church, he felt Christ's power. And then, there's just one little scene as well that's just fades in and fades out. It's about 15 seconds long. It's him age 12. He picks up a photo, 15-second flashback. It's him preaching to adults age 12.
Yeah.
He's been doing this his entire life. It's all he really knows how to do. And he certainly is a better preacher than he is a man. But that's also a key thing to the story. So it's
by the way, I've
great.
got a reference for you. I think Richard might know this one. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, Monty. There was a movie from 1992 starring Steve Martin. It's called Leap of Faith.
Oh, yeah.
And basically, if you've ever seen this movie, that's what made me think this movie was just going to be similar. It's a plot where basically there's a guy who's a fake faith healer and he's in like a small town where no one knows him and he wins over the people. And then the idea is he gets exposed. Put it this way, this movie even has a cool line in it where even though he is totally fake in this one, like it's not legit what he's doing. First of all, in this movie, they have a slight sweet moment where like at the end, somehow he sort of maybe did do a miracle because he finally sort of believed. And then also he has a cool line in it where when they expose his past as a con man, this is genius. He just goes, well, who's going to know sin but a sinner? And then he spins it as like, well, of course, I'd have to be the one who believes in redemptive power because I was indeed, as you say, a liar and a con man. But what's funny is that movie is just about what you think this movie's going to be like. Oh, there's a big rug pull coming. You're going to find out even he doesn't really believe it. Like, there's not even that component. And at the end, you presume it's going to be something like either he makes off with all their money or he does have this church or something. No, that's what's funny about the movie is like, first of all, it actually doesn't have anything. This movie has almost no pace to it. It's just scenes of people slowly walk around talking. There's barely any action. There's only a couple of scenes where you like beat someone up or something. That's even very mild. A couple of seconds. And the movie doesn't have anything sort of driving its plot, really. It's just what this guy's doing in his daily life. It's actually like an artifact of him. It's just such an unusual film to me.
It is really Southern Gothic in terms of literature. And like it is very similar to like a William Faulkner novel in that these are kind of abstract character-driven pieces. And for those people who don't know about Southern Gothic fiction, we will go back to my hated genre of Gothic fiction, which I didn't think I would be talking how much I hate it on the show constantly. But so Gothic fiction is a European genre that basically focused a lot on the supernatural, right? And it was, here's a haunted castle or a weird crypt. And, here's the corruption of the Catholic Church and all this like lascivious stuff is going to happen or weird violence. And, obviously this bled into Victorian literature, but Victorian literature, things like Dracula are like way better than Gothic fiction. Gothic fiction is pretty much garbage. But this transformed in America into Southern Gothic because a real key theme of Gothic literature is that the past is like manifesting in the present in very weird ways. Like this castle's ruin is causing ghosts to hurt us, right? And Southern Gothic kind of took some of these ideas and it said, okay, well, the breaking of the South, the Civil War and Southern Reconstruction have caused these massive scars in the Southern psyche, basically. And so you have these class divides and you have these racial issues and you have this perpetuation of violence, right? And this is a lot of where people like Faulkner's work reside in, is that there is still this like there's this dark undercurrent, and it can take Southern Gothic is still being made. Sinners is a fucking Southern Gothic movie. It's about supernatural vampires based off of racism. Like, it is a Southern Gothic movie. This is not supernatural, but it is about racism. It is about class divides. It is about random violence still hurting the community. And where is the darkness within Sonny coming from? But the horror element is Sonny, right? And so this really does fit that Southern Gothic theme. And then later on, a lot of this turned into like Western Gothic, which would be like Cormac McCarthy, right? So Gothic literature did make good stuff in the end. And I do quite like Southern Gothic. Another movie might be like Big Fish. If you've seen that one, I think would probably.
This is. I was going to make this point later on, but this is good if we're talking about the Southern Gothic stuff. First of all, we have to do Angel Heart at some point, right? That's one of the all-time great Southern Gothic films. But The Apostle, is 3 years before Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Oh Brother, Where Art Thou probably can't go on to be a hit without priming the pump of, like I say, we had a run of like really good Southern Gothic kind of movies.
Yeah. It's an interesting one because it's like have Southern Gothic, but it is an Odyssey remake.
Yes,
you know
exactly.
what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting crossroads.
It's essentially
classical
a veneer,
literature. And,
it's a veneer of a genre laid over a narrative of a different.
It's a banger
genre.
movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
also just to your point, Monty, I went through a period of time where I was utterly convinced for years, and I probably said this to Duncan when we were younger men, that The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner was the greatest novel ever written. Now I would say my taste has changed somewhat, but I still think
it's a great book.
I still think
I like As I Lay Dying more, but they're both great.
Yeah, great stuff.
By the way, another thing you sort of referenced earlier too is when they have there's one thing actually about the South that people don't appreciate is they have a thing like a lot of cultures where they have a connection to their past through those like strange little sayings and, Southern wisdom and things. But if you ever listen to those, like they have them in England as well, etc., like they sound like just silly things that people say, platitudes, but often like there is like some wisdom hidden in there. Again, by the way, if I just switched this to here's what a Zen monk told me in Japan, you'd all be fascinated. Ooh, incredible, like Reddit faces. Ooh, what? Wow, let's consider. But you just, because so many movies have told you these are stupid, poor people or whatever, you just ignore it and think it's just trite or stupid. But I think there's like, because to me, that's also what this movie's about. Like, I agree with Richard. This is like about the concept of like Southern hospitality and the idea that like, if you are like good folk, then people will provide for you, by the way, in a very Christian manner. Like they do sort of live out their ideals in that sense. That's why it's not cynical. It's why it's kind of an interesting fact. Like I say, I've almost never seen a real Hollywood film that treated this as like a serious subject with no like sort of caprice hidden in there or no like booby trap of some kind.
Yeah.
Like I say, I'm not even joking. Look, I do appreciate this character was a flawed character and he had troubles in his life. And like British Spear, I don't know if I'd want to be around him necessarily, depending which character I was playing within this arc. But like I say, I actually was just in the whole movie. It didn't put me off even when he did potentially kill someone or he was lying or whatever. There's something about the character was really compelling.
It is, but it also, it generates the question. I think the question that was very interesting to me about this is, okay, he gets caught eventually, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's take this character and let's transport him to another point in history, right? This guy never gets caught.
Sure.
In medieval times, this guy murks that dude.
Oh, he could be some Machiavelli attack guy. Yeah,
no,
of course, yeah.
It's not even a Machiavellian. It's just that he murks that dude, goes 100 miles to a different town, and then nobody ever arrests him.
Oh, before someone could hear you on the radio and catch you. I see what you mean.
And,
yes, that's true.
And this guy goes on to become a hero in this new town, and his entire, he would never be caught. He would never be caught because it was back in the day significantly easier to get away with this shit.
Yeah, but doesn't this movie imply though, Monty, there is a serendipity that like actually it essentially whether he genuinely believed it or not, and I believe he does. I believe textually, I believe the character believes it. Like Jesus sent him to the small community to rekindle, the retired pastor's love of faith, to build a church.
He succeeded. It's actually an appropriate moment to leave. It sort of got them up and running.
To take a racist character like Billy Bob Thornton and cleanse the hate from his heart, so he can sit in a church with black people in it and praise the Lord. And he's done everything. And also,
you could even argue he inadvertently helped that woman reconcile in a way he never could in his own religion. You could imply he actually did do the Lord's work.
And then obviously finds a young man who is initially cynical about the church, just a humble mechanic, but who then accepts Christ as his savior and then goes on to, he gives him his Bible at the end, his most fucking treasured possession. He gives young Walton Goggins his Bible and says, like, I'm going to jail, but, you're going to heaven, like, it's fucking great. So, it was like one last mission. You can look at it like, almost Blues Brothers-esque. He was on a mission from God. This was his one last mission. Yeah. And then Jesus says, right, now it's time for you to pay the price. It's time you have to pay your earthly price for your sins before you can be forgiven and pass into heaven. There could be no redemption without that. And so obviously he goes to jail, realizes that, singing his heart out on a chain gang.
Who was our Heavenly Father's Son? Jesus. And who was sent on earth to save us here? Jesus. Yea, though I walk through the valley, who's my Lord and Savior? Jesus.
He's fucking great. I love this movie.
Yeah.
I'm a cynical piece of shit. I love this film.
Yeah, and I think, to the point about it being a non-traditional movie, it is significantly more like a novel than anything else. It gives you the pieces.
I mean, it's the dreaded term, isn't it? The character study. Monty.
Yeah, the character study.
It's not some wanky, run the Broadway saying that.
There
exactly,
is, like a novel, there is a significant amount of information that is hidden from the viewer, just like it's hidden from the reader. And you must interpret what is given you, because if you just take this movie at face value, you would never understand why Sonny's wife would divorce him. You would never really, his psychology is opaque in this. Mm-hmm. We never really know what he's thinking. And that's why he's such a fascinating character, because he appears to be a man of true belief, but he's also the same man who, when his church gets interrupted, will just go fist fight somebody outside in a psycho manner.
Well, just get on out of here.
Get on out of here right now.
I'll leave when I choose to, Mr. EF. That's what I'll do.
Come on around on the other side, buddy. Come on. Stay right there.
Go.
Come on, buddy.
Let's see what you're made of. You want the Lord to watch me kick your
ass?
ass?
I don't need the Lord.
Is that what you want?
I need the Lord.
Come on.
Come on.
Or when he's at his own children's baseball game,
totally justified,
walk
by the
off
way, to
and then
beat
just
up Billy
turn
Bob
around
Thornton.
and hit someone in the head with a baseball bat. And
that's less justified.
It is the what?
I said that's less justified. I won't lie. That second one, bad.
Sure.
Yeah, agree. Do agree.
I mean, even if we can all understand his anger about that situation, clearly that I hate to say this, but even if you're going to kill that guy at your children's baseball game,
sure.
Monty has no problem with the crime, just the venue.
I'll put it to you, you might have killed a man, but at your children's birthday.
I might be a simple country lawyer, it seems to me.
But like
you
I
were
said,
going to murder a man, why not do it in his bed when he with your wife?
I mean, exactly, because he already caught them together. It wasn't, it's weird that the crime of passion didn't happen then. And like I said,
but there's a thematic link. He did throw a baseball through their window, though, and then later at a baseball game, he hits him with a bat. So he's just using all the equipment of baseball to express his frustration over his failed relationship.
He was obviously a disappointed Kevin Costner fan.
Exactly.
I think if when you look at these scenes when he commits this horrible act of violence in front of his own children, like I said, you can assume pretty safely that he was somehow abused as a child, either sexually, probably violently, by his own father would be my guess, watching this and the way he behaves and his darkness and the way he can't control himself. But, by displaying this own violence again in front of his children, he is in a way like perpetuating the darkness within himself. And I think that's what's so interesting about this film is that you get the sense that he is trying to perpetuate the good parts of himself, the lights within himself through religion and through building communities. But he is simultaneously accidentally perpetuating the darkness at times, right? By inflicting this upon other people and his own kids.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, look, I think what you have to also understand is that this, I think he sees himself as almost like, how do I phrase it? Like he himself is proof of the Lord's providence,
Yes.
He knows he's a piece of shit.
Oh, he definitely sees himself as a sinner. Absolutely. Yeah. To me, that's why I agree with Monty. That's why he's so hardcore into the religion. That's like the way to ward off the evil.
Yeah. And when he says, and again, it comes up time and time again. He's not afraid of saying it. Even though there is an inherent there are a number of moments of dishonesty. Lying, of course, is a sin. but like when the time to be honest about his past is there, for the benefit of the church or the benefit of bringing someone into the church, like with Billy Bob Thornton. Remember, the last thing he says before they get up and accept him into the church is he goes, "I was a worse sinner than you in my time." And think about it. This is Billy Bob Thornton. This is a racist guy who came down to fucking attack a church, got his ass kicked, came back with a bulldozer and 3 of his he was going to destroy a fucking church.
He didn't even do it at night. He didn't even bulldoze
at
at
a
night.
community
like,
fair in the middle
Sunday.
of the day. Children there, right? Like, that's insane,
what
right?
a psycho.
And that's insane. And Robert Duvall's like, "I was a worse sinner than you." I was like, "Really? Fuck." Well, you didn't kill that dude, so So anyway.
By the way, one thing also about this movie, we haven't even talked about this part, is the traditional type of role that Robert Duvall masters normally is the stoic, like deep character, but we're like just a little bit. He is so over the top in this, but he pulls it off. He's like, he captures that passion and the idea the guy's always on something. There's something quite unique about the performance. It's why the idea that like this is like his passion project he always wanted to do is so interesting, which I didn't look into the background as usual, but it made me wonder, do you find anything out about that shit?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, first of all, Robert Duvall, I said this on one of the episodes where we set up, we were going to do a Robert Duvall arc, and we were like laughing about, how to fucking lose all your subscribers and get no views, etc.
I do think this arc is going to get fuck all views.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's good. It's sweet, and that's
it's
not the draw, is it at all?
Yeah, exactly. Doing it for an actor that gave me,
absolutely,
so many great memories and such a great experience, and legends don't get replaced.
And all I'm going to say is this, Lord, if you're out there and you want to work your methods, just make this have 20k views, and I'll know you must be real. Because how could the apostle ever get 20k?
Right.
If that happens, then I'll have to.
You have no idea. You have no idea actually how funny that is within the context of what I'll talk about in a moment.
Okay.
But anyway, so it was right. Robert Duvall is not like a regular Hollywood person. He is an unabashed Republican, but he was such a nice guy. Hollywood would just sort of. They allowed him to have it.
He's the token Republican.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Him and what, Charlton Heston?
Yes,
right.
Yeah, exactly. Like these types of characters.
John Wayne is a few. Obviously, yeah, sure.
It's like, okay, he's a Republican, but also as well. I mean, like in terms of his early life, he was raised in what is called Christian Science. Yeah, exactly. Now, for those
that was one that had like a faith healing component, right?
Yes,
something like that.
Yeah. So that he was raised in the Christian Science church, and even though he wasn't like a devout attendee or whatever growing up, that's the background of his family. And so I think I think basically like he also had a big schism with his family as well. He was estranged from his family because they wanted him to go into military service. Which he didn't want to do that. And then he ended up wanting to act, but then he went into the army and served in the Korean War. I think he did like 1 year. So anyway, and then he came back and it was all about the acting. So I think basically there are like these little elements that are like represented in here. I think he wanted to present a sympathetic view of the church and how churches bring communities together, even if you don't necessarily believe in the style of preaching. I also think as well, when we talk about the term charismatic, I think people don't realize like it's essentially a branch of Christianity. It is called the charismatic Christianity movement, and it is embedded in Pentecostalism because it is about having a preacher that ultimately can speak to a crowd, but it's all about the Holy Spirit and the Holy Ghost and baptism and being reborn and cleansed.
Can I explain that real quick to people that understand?
Jump in, brother. Yeah, absolutely.
So the Pentecost is a holiday where the apostles had the Holy Ghost descend and infuse them, and that's what caused them to become apostles and start to evangelize, right? And in Pentecostalism in America, how this manifests is this is the people you see speaking in tongues when they're like possessed by the Holy Spirit, and it is this, animated
which is referenced
style
in
of
this
preaching.
movie,
It
hilariously
is
by that radio guy.
Movie, but...
He goes, "Now listen, now you can say
That is
whatever you
very
want
funny.
from the good book, but no speaking in tongues on these airwaves, sir." It's brilliant.
I did laugh at that moment. I was like,
so
classic.
good. So good.
Only in Louisiana would you have that? That's like your problem on the radio. It's like no more tongues.
That's the small print for your advertising your church.
Tongues on these. Too many people talking in tongues on these airwaves. Can't have that anymore.
Good. It's so good.
One other thing, No fancy stuff. We don't allow speaking on tongues. Only the King's English here. No speaking on tongues over these airwaves.
And also, when he
that's where it
actually does
comes
that
from.
second act, when he goes to the small town, he actually self-baptizes himself and then like christens himself like the apostle or whatever. That's even
I was going to ask you about that because I always think that's a funny scene because it shows two things as well. The hubris to baptize yourself is kind of outrageous.
Yeah.
But
it is Napoleonic in a way.
Yeah, but also the fucking he recognizes it's also symbolic that he does recognize it's a fresh start. This is what I mean. This is what's great about the movie.
No. This is the brilliance of this character, though.
Yeah,
is that his psychology is so nuanced and layered, and this is where it's very much like a Faulkner novel, right? Or one of the great like pieces of art of Southern Gothic is that when he baptizes himself, his conscious level knows I need an alter ego to escape the police.
Yes, sure,
true.
But no, it almost is like a cover identity.
Yeah, so he's like, oh shit. But how is he justifying this to himself? I committed a sin. I am rebaptized. I'm cleansing myself of the sin.
He understands how to participate in like his own self-fulfilling prophecy. Yes,
he is cleansing himself of the sin, being reborn as a different person who is apparently somehow even more dedicated to God than he was
the best
before.
alias to pick, just my initials, you know. If you want a deep cover identity, what's that stand for? None of your business. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, I'm Apostle EF now. I'm no longer Sonny, right? And you don't really know why he's doing this, but you can see that his own psychology is just at war with itself because it's like, shit, I need to escape. Must justify reason that I am still a good person, or I'm a good person now. And it is a mark of how everyone's psychology works, right? In his own story, just like in all our stories, we're the main character, and we have to justify being the main character through these narratives. And you literally watch him. His psychology cannot comprehend why he murdered that guy. So now this is how it's manifesting so that he can continue on with his life. It's wild to watch.
Yeah. And I also just want to talk about, as I said, the dialogue in this movie. It bristles with authenticity, with all the folksisms and homilies and the way people do talk in the South. But it's also just really clever dialogue a lot of the time.
Quite witty, isn't it?
Yeah. My favorite line in the whole movie is when the preacher's asking him about his work ethic. And he says, what is it? He goes, well, I quit school because I didn't like recess.
You move faster than any man I ever seen.
Well, when I was young, I tell everybody I quit school because I didn't like recess. I did,
it's like
straight fire, isn't it? That's a great joke. That's such a really good joke. But it's delivered in such like a deadpan way, isn't it?
And by the way, obviously he is as good as his word. He's got 2 jobs to pay for the paint for the church, and you know, there's just there's loads of little lines
and he is
like
humble.
that in the movie.
You know, he's coming from this big church, and he goes to this new place, and he takes a job as a mechanic and as at an ice cream shop.
As well. Yeah,
he's literally just making ice cream cones for kids at an ice cream stand, right?
Yeah. Even when he's preaching, the shit he says is sometimes hilarious. Like, there's a bit where he's like, "Do you want to be on the devil's hit list? Then you got to be on Jesus's mailing list." I love that. I love that line.
Just backflips over the devil or whatever it is. There's so many good lines in this one.
When he's on the radio station and he's talking about Moses and the 10 Commandments, and he's going, "There was only 10 commandments. There were not 11 commandments. There were not 12 commandments. Thou cannot shout the 11th commandment, for it does not exist." It's like fucking. He's just straight fire, like and.
Want to be on the devil's hit list? No! Do you want to be on the devil's hit list? No! Then you better get on Jesus' mailing list. You better get on Jesus' mailing list. Put all the elements of the devil behind you. Work on it.
Obviously, as well, like Duvall goes through. He's essentially 3 characters in one here. Like he is the troubled piece of shit sinner, the contemplative, the quiet guy who's like always thinking about how we can get to the next stage and get the church up and running and all of this stuff. And then the fiery, energetic preacher. I mean, this must have been an unbelievably demanding role for Duvall, especially in an environment where you're not getting notes from a director.
He's also 66 or something when he does this movie, by the way, mate. He's not a young guy either.
Which you wouldn't believe. I mean, he might look that age, but in terms of the energy,
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
What a great performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, while we're just talking about performances and cast, what a fucking cast in this film. Another reason I didn't want to fucking
That's how you
spoil
know he
it
must have
for you.
pulled in some favours.
Yeah.
Like, mate, the movie opens, you're like, is that Farrah Fawcett?
Is
Why
that
she in
Farrah
this movie?
Fawcett?
Then later on,
June
just
Carter
an unannounced
Cassius' mom.
just an unannounced Billy Bob Thornton. He's just in the movie too. This is already 1947, mate. He's already a famous person. Like this guy, he was pulling in all his Rolodex. It's good, wasn't it?
Also, as well, the outrage to get to kiss prime Miranda Richardson. How also kind of how dare you, sir? How dare you, Mr. Duvall? Young Walter.
Yeah, but that's why
Goggins.
when she comes in reconciled, he's like, I'm out.
Yeah,
he doesn't even confront
he's
her.
so petty in that moment. I love it. He's literally talking about, God gives me all the energy I need. I could work another job. Yeah. And then he just looks around. Miranda Richardson's reconciling with her husband. And he just goes, I quit, sir. I will never serve another meal out that window.
I love it.
And he just walks out. And it's like, it's the fucking dichotomy this guy is. This fucking contradiction. This hypocritical man. Who is like probably the best preacher I've ever seen.
It's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. So here you go. I can tell you the story about how it made its money. And because you are like saying it is proof in a God that a movie for $5 million that was obscure and it came out in 97 and got really overlooked by the Academy, which we'll also talk about in a moment. And it went on to make over $21 million in box office. Well, here's what's interesting, guys. Have a guess how much it made on its opening weekend.
Are we going to go something small? Is it going to be something like 100,000 or something, and then it goes crazy after that? Are we doing something like that?
Got 100, Monty?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think probably this was a word of mouth thing that spread in the South, and it was just a very niche, geographically located phenomenon.
$40,000.
Ooh, but that's got to be one of the craziest. Remember, normally your opening weekend has to be insane, doesn't it? If you could go for 40K to get 20 mil total, I'll give you the story.
What is crazy is churches and Bible groups and online, because obviously it's 97, so we've got very like early internet, I think, word of mouth. And basically this was upheld because the Christian community believed like, holy shit, this is like a completely fair and reasonable representation of our faith. All of the church groups started going to this movie and they started recommending it. And it was kind of like, like a Passion of Christ thing. Where where basically it was like it made its money.
Like a whole trip of everyone goes.
It made its money because of the congregations. Essentially, it's like such a crazy story because to get up to 21 million worldwide box office on that basis after starting with a $40,000 weekend, you don't know how right you are. It really does show the power.
And it has no special effects. It has no giant sequence. There's no even the actors. I assume were probably
doesn't really have a plot
to Robert Duvall. I know it's nuts, isn't it? Yeah. By the way, though, what's funny is in a perfect note of like resonance, that almost itself is the ideology of the movie, which is you might think, yeah, but that's just because a bunch of Christians got to get, yeah, but it's still a miracle, isn't it? How the fuck did a tiny movie that has no real like it doesn't have a satisfying plot, it just has an interesting like character study of a character that normally people wouldn't like queue up to watch. The idea of a $5 million movie like that can make 20 million is crazy. That is nuts.
Yep, absolutely.
It's very impressive.
And so we move on to the 1998 Oscars, right? How could anyone but Robert Duvall win? Like, how? Like, think of the films, right, that were nominated. Now, look, LA Confidential was nominated for Best Picture. We covered that. Titanic was there. The Full Monty. Good Will Hunting.
Holy shit, the Full Monty was on there.
Yeah.
What's wrong? He wasn't even nominated, I'll remind people 2 years ago. The Full Monty's on there. What the fuck?
Well, it's going to upset you because he was nominated for the Oscar, and he ran up against a very mediocre
as best acting performance. I'm assuming.
Yes, best actor in a leading role, and he ran up against a very. I mean, no disrespect to a great actor, but it was a very mediocre performance. Dustin Hoffman in Wag the Dog, if you remember that film.
Okay.
Peter Fonda, obviously getting to Last of the Summer Wine. He was in a movie called Ulysses Gold, where he played Ulysses Jackson. Then you had Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting, obviously, which
All right.
You might like the film, but the performance is just Matt Damon, right?
Yeah, it's nothing crazy.
exactly.
This seems like a pretty weak field compared to some of the other years.
And then the
90s,
winner was Jack Nicholson. And you go, oh, well, Jack Nicholson, straight fire.
What
Mate,
movie, though?
yeah, as good as it gets, that fucking romance movie.
No, that was when he felt De Niro already. That was when he'd already gone De Niro. Why did they go De Niro?
And so Robert
again,
Duvall,
because they didn't give it to him. They didn't give it to him
Put
for
Jack
like
Nicholson
Chinatown
on my
or
list
whatever.
of people that when I go back in time and I have to murder them and save their film career, he can go on the list as well. He's right after Bobby. I go Bobby De Niro first, a couple of years earlier for Jack. I get them all, mate. I get them all by the end.
Yeah, mate. And obviously, Robert Duvall had to sit
by the
there
way,
on that night.
I just have to mention this while I remember it now. I think it was from our movie channel or something. I can't remember. Or maybe it was just something else. But someone put on my Discord in the meme channel like a screenshot of a comment. And apparently it was like a real comment. It wasn't even a troll. It was someone who watched like Casino or something. And they were like, oh my God, I can't believe how good Robert De Niro is. I've only seen him in stuff like Meet the Fockers. And I'm like, oh, I'm dying, please. They're like, he was really good when he was younger. Like, what are you doing? Because there will be a whole generation that only saw the shit he did from like 2010.
I know, it's horrible. Horrifying to think about.
That's so gross. That's so gross. That would be like someone watching Godfather Part 2 and going, is that the guy from Rocky and Bullwinkle? Like,
This is actually mind-blowing to me because
what are you doing?
Jack Nicholson had already won 2 Academy Awards before this.
It's not
So
even
like, why were they giving it to him again?
That movie's nothing. Why are we giving it for that? What are we doing right now?
So, I mean, and you know, The Apostle, it wasn't nominated for Best Picture. It wasn't nominated for Best Screenplay.
I think screenplay is even the better shout, mate.
Yeah.
It's like a very interestingly written film as well.
It was unbelievably overlooked by the Oscars, and this
I mean,
is
the
another
directing
reason why I
was
wanted to bring it out.
mid as fuck, if we're being honest. Like,
I
there's
mean,
nothing
listen,
special about the direction here.
I'll say there's nothing special about the direction. I can get on board with that as an opinion, but I will say the way the film is assembled is interesting. I will certainly say that it's unique.
I agree.
It doesn't feel, it doesn't feel like like we've all seen what happens when Kevin Costner directs a film. You know what I mean? And it's just so generic and like it just hits all the beats. This is way more meditative and slow and
it's like a novel.
Yeah,
exactly.
And which
I can also
really
understand. I can understand why people bounce off this movie too, because people bounce off the films that Cormac McCarthy wrote, because they're novels. And I think that's been one of the funniest things about me reading criticism of things like The Counselor, which is people are like, it's like reading a Cormac McCarthy novel. I'm like, yeah, that's what I wanted. That's literally just what I wanted.
Yeah. That's what I paid my money for. Yeah, exactly.
But you just have to deal with characters doing insane monologues that are weird in film and also aren't realistic to how people talk in real life, because that's just how he writes.
Yeah. But I mean, for Duvall to miss the Oscar here is I don't know. I mean, it's like I've always talked a lot about like Pulp Fiction being snubbed, and obviously Duncan and I have talked about Heat and all of this stuff. I feel at least those movies got recognized. This movie didn't. This movie just like
it's also slept on film. I've never heard of it, mate.
In an unbelievable, like I know I'm talking about Titanic, like massive box office smash, and Good Will Hunting, like in the resurrection of like the concept of the indie auteur, right? Like these are important. LA Confidential. We've covered these films and constantly referenced them, but I still think that's an unbelievably weak field. Like for an Oscar year, if those are the best examples of a year of film, I don't know how The Apostle can get left out. And that's another reason why, much like other movies I've added to this when we do the arcs, like this is a movie people have to see. I will also add, if you are someone who practices faith, any faith, by the way, I think the narrative of this movie is very reaffirming and will also reaffirm you in that belief, in that faith, without sort of mocking you. You don't need to be a Christian to appreciate this.
No.
This is about how faith can override certain things, and I do wonder if the Academy were a little bit snooty about it on that basis.
Well,
Well,
it
like I
even
said,
makes me think I would actually love to see someone from each different tradition do a film like this. Like, I'll give you an example, even though it wouldn't normally be my sort of like milieu I'd be interested in. Imagine if someone made a movie where it was in like contemporary times with a Muslim guy, but who actually is like some sort of inspired by faith and he's doing like all acts. That would be a fascinating, different view on their culture that I've never experienced ever. Because whenever I experience it, they're just a terrorist or they're just a lie. And it's like, again, no one ever treats it as serious.
I feel like we're about Kingdom of Heaven, mate. I mean, if we're, I know another movie we constantly reference, but like when I was at school,
refuse to do.
Yeah, I know. When I was at school, like we learnt about the Crusades and Saladin and the Saracens, and let me just say, my child when I was learning about this in school, wasn't a lot of textual analysis of Saladin or who he was. Wasn't really. You know, there was no like Saladin apologists in class. You know what I'm saying? We was just like, yeah, we fucked. We went to fuck this guy up. He was a bad man, and things happened.
That was it.
Yeah, and that was pretty much what you learn in school. There's no nuance or recontextualization or even studying sources from outside of whatever's on the syllabus. Obviously schools changed a lot since I was a kid, but I mean, I remember like every time. So also as well, every time you see like this movie come up. It's like people say this is like the historic representation of Saladin. He wasn't like some despicable evil person. He was quite a benevolent conqueror, and obviously wanted compromise where possible. And he's revered, as like this great historical figure. And the more you read about him, you understand it, right? And it's one of the funny thing is when you scrolling at night and eventually the Kingdom of Heaven shorts come up and he's like, I will get you my best physicians. Everyone's like, yeah, praise be to God, like fucking Saladin, the great man, blah, blah, blah. They're all there in the comments, culturally he's an icon. And it's
for sure.
And it's super interesting because often you wouldn't have that frame of reference if it wasn't for like the global connectivity of the internet. I find that really interesting. And so again, back linking all of that back to the movie, I think if you don't know anything about Pentecostalism, you don't know anything about evangelical churches, you don't really understand beyond again, I'll use that word, that sneering, smug, look at these idiots in a church, like hyping themselves up and all of this stuff. You don't know anything about that because you've only really been shown the extreme comedic examples. Like this, watch this film and it will underscore the importance of faith for social cohesion and for little communities.
It's also for this version of faith with this particular human being, and many human beings are similar to this one, where there is. I think one of the issues is that there is a lionization of intellectual religion, the deep study of texts, knowing Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic, and being able to have, intellectually spar or grapple with these big ideas from a logical perspective and or a theological perspective, right? And that's not really what this is. Like you say, it's vibes preaching.
Yeah.
There's not really scripture in this, right? It's him making up stories that connect with people to the present, and there's not a lot of intellectual depth. He's witty, and he says, "Oh, and we're going to keep the devil at bay." But that is almost like a magic spell. He is invoking upon himself to keep his darkness at bay. The religion is actually incidental, I think, to the story and to a lot of Southern preaching, if I'm going to be honest. Like Christianity is a vehicle, but it's not. It could be many other religions. Let's put it that way. That's not what they're doing.
This way, isn't the movie also, like, I would say this movie, I know what you mean, Monty, because I would say this movie isn't necessarily telling you about the efficacy specifically of Christianity. It's more telling you about the function that religion plays in people's lives. I know what you mean, Monty. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And what it is a personal it's a personal incantation to keep his own darkness away. Right. And for other people, it's a tool to create this community and this space where they can open up to profound feelings of awe or connectedness. Yes. It's a universal theme, and it's the base layer of religion. But oftentimes I think people think about religion as the intellectual study on top of that. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is really taking religion down to its roots. And and I think other Christians, especially Christian elites, right? People who are from Catholicism, right? With its very serious schooling, or, certain Lutheranism, right? That are much more, I would say, intellectual takes on Christianity. And because these people tend to be the ones who control culture, right? They're traditionally more educated. They're the ones who are in charge of the media companies that publish the text or make the movies, right? It does tend to be ignored. And I think, to Richard's story about how this was popular and how it actually made money, it makes a lot of sense. But there's always this incentive to shit on this because, if we're being real, it's not really Christian. It's kind of just the fundamental, the magic stuff at the bottom of every religion. And people just are so divorced from that. There's so many layers between them and that in certain Christian branches that they never really go back down to that, or they think that experience is somehow base and invalid.
There's actually a really good scene in True Detective that it's hard to believe.
Also Southern Gothic, by the way.
Yes.
Great example of Southern Gothic.
In the first season of True Detective, where it's like they literally go to one of the tent revivals. We see a tent revival in this. If you don't know what a tent revival is, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's like they throw up a tent in, a field, and they put flyers up in neighboring communities, and they invite people to come and, and there'll be some sermonizing and what have you. And then the tent gets taken down and everyone goes their separate ways, and round and round and round the preacher will move, And so in True Detective, you have Russ Cole, who is a pessimist atheist, like absolutely cannot believe in God or Jesus or anything like that, particularly because he lost his daughter in a horrible accident. So he has no faith. He doesn't even have faith in humanity, let alone a higher power. No. And then you've obviously got Marty Hart, played by Woody Harrelson, who is, he cheats on his wife. He's a heavy drinker, but he still kind of wants to believe in something beyond all of this to give his life some cohesion and meaning. And they go to this tent revival and they're talking about it. And, some of the lines in this is just great. But ultimately, it is essentially the dialogue people will have engaging with this film. That, it's good that these people have something to believe in. And, Russ Cole says the only, Marty Hart says, if we didn't have religion, the world would be a freak show of murder and debauchery. And Russ Cole says, if the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of divine reward, then brother, that person is a piece of shit, and I want as many of them out in the open as possible. And so they have this wonderful back and forth. And ultimately, I feel that's like a dialogue a lot of people will have about this type of preaching and this type of faith, that it on the outside, it looks weird, but but does it serve something positive? Probably, in the grand scheme of things. A lot of people like to believe they're beyond this. And like Monty says, not a lot of intellectualism. This is about a feeling, a belief. It's the purest distillation of the Christian faith in a lot of ways. So I think if anyone's interested in all these companion pieces, there's many of them.
I also have never really found that, I've always found that to be sort of a straw man argument, because first of all, the implication is like you on some level almost know it's fake, and it's only like the notion that you're going to gain something. Like, what's weird about that is that in itself is an inherently materialistic way of looking at the world, because you're acting like, as long as I get something in the end, that's why I'm going to be good. No, in the meantime, you are going to be good. Like, that has its own efficacy, its own value. Like, and also the reason it's a bit of a straw man to me is because when people say that, they're implying that they're a good person based on no idea. First of all, every person has an ideology, whether it's Marxism, whatever. You're all going towards some utopia or something. That's how all the reward mechanisms in the human brain work. And then also, if that were true, then people could do all these wonderful things I just said, but wouldn't need any of the religion. But that just hasn't proven to be the case. And when we've moved into a secularist, atheist world, people actually go way more like to eras when we didn't have religion, where people would just rob you and do things, and they'd be like, well, there is no, in fact, it's the other way around. There is no punishment, so why not do it? Like, it's the actual same argument, but just spun the other way. Because one thing I think is funny about this is I can even use an example of an ideology I don't like, Marxism, and say I might think Marxism is wrong or evil or anti-human, but here's the thing. I could see examples in communities where some person who was caught up in that, maybe naively, if I'm being generous to them, they might do things like help the poor, etc. That has its own actual real world community value. That in that moment, it's not really about whether the ideology is efficacious. It's about the fact that it is good to have things like that happen in real life to help people. I think that's a positive. I'll give you an example of why, since we referenced the Kingdom of Heaven. One of the reasons why, if you ever see medieval portrayals of Christianity, it's so intense and overwrought. It's like flagellation. Because think about it, in those eras, you didn't live in some safe bubble where like the police help you. You don't ever have to have violence. You had to engage in violence all the time, and you might have killed a person. Maybe not to do it a long haul. Yeah, so the world is so rough. It's an appropriate ramping up of this like redemptive force. Whereas, yes, in certain cases, if someone lives in New York in the modern day, maybe they live in a community where they never had to engage with this. So to them, these are just silly ideas. I think the thing about this movie is it's more about the idea that like whether you believe it is real or not, as in like the ideology, the actual effect on people's lives is inarguably real. I mean, that's why the interesting thing about this movie is to show that, like, at least in this film, we don't really see, like, there's no cynicism in the characters is the key thing. You can think it's somehow exploitative or they're exaggerating things, but it does seem like they are earnest. Like, in fact, that's the thing about the movie. They didn't really put anyone in who was sort of a con man, did they? They were all on some level. In fact, the funny thing is, even the Billy Bob Thornton one, like I said, at the end, he actually is earnestly searching for something. There's a reason why he sort of like hates this church and why he's so specifically against black people. So he's yearning for some sort of connection or some sort of transformative element in his life.
Yeah, well, he is like a symbol of the South, though. Billy Bob Thornton. He's an unnamed character. He is the stand-in for the South at large, right? And we talked about how Southern Gothic is based off of the themes of damage from the past echoing into the present, and that's exactly what he is. In fact, you know,
would you even argue as well, Monty? Isn't the number one thing that's actually been transformative to racism in the South actually Christianity? That's the one thing that seems to unite the people. Sure. Actually, it is famous. You have a lot of churches where people who otherwise would be divided could go to the same church. Even that's a real thing. Yeah,
you know, the racism in the South is illogical, right? And yet it is an echo of the damage of the past. He is carrying the wounds of the past, and he himself is wounded and wants to escape.
Sure, yes.
He is the Fisher King, to put this in the.
You can see something's off with him from the second he arrives. Yeah. There's just something a bit off with this guy, isn't there? Yeah,
like he is hurt. You know, the history has hurt him. He didn't do anything, right? He just carries the burden of this ideology, which was born out of this pain of this conflict that was the Civil War and, you know, frankly, the horrors of slavery, because the people of the South, you can say what you want, but they were inflicting psychological damage on themselves through the act of slavery. You can't just sit there and abuse and enslave other human beings without that doing something to you. Because again, you have to justify it in some way. And you say, oh, these people are inhuman. So they're animals, they're beasts of burden. So we can do this to them. Right. And so he is the legacy of that. And yet he himself wants to escape that pain, which is what the scene at the end is. Right. Mm-hmm. And the concept that this kind of preaching and this kind of community building can, in fact, it gives you hope that the South can be saved.
If you reach out, the Lord will accept you here today. If you reach out, He'll accept you here and forevermore. And He will love you forever, even as we in this church love you now.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes unsaid, but this also isn't a cynical view of the South. I mean, in both churches, they are racially integrated. And remember, this is at a time when we're coming out of the civil rights movement, if we're indeed not still in it. And there is no racial animus. The one character we see with having racial animus clearly came because he wanted to be welcome in the church. But
by the way, as you said earlier, they even explain also that, like, normally these black people want like a black preacher, but they're going to accept you. There's even that like element built into it. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, again, he explicitly says it, you know, like we talked about at the start. He says, you know, the white people, they think you're black, but the black people know you're not, but they do sure love the way you preach. And it's like, again, this is what I mean about, like, if you've lived in the South and you've seen it, you know, look, yes, America still got problems, of course. Like we are a blip away from a horrifying moment in history, right? Like we're humans. We move at a snail's pace. when it comes to progress on these particular issues. But like I saw with my own eyes when I was in the South, genuine, community and, like I said, this racial integration where the animus isn't there. It's like, this is my community, and these are my neighbors and this is my church. And, to present that image, I think, is very counter to what a lot of people would want you to think America is and what it can be. And like, especially in the South. And so the Billy Bob Thornton character is a very important bit. And look, I know there's some people who are going to say, oh man, it's so cheesy. It's so cheesy and it's so like cringe or whatever. But within the context of the movie, I think it's a powerful scene. I don't give a fuck. That is what the Christian faith can be when it's stripped from all of the bullshit. You've come here to do me harm. I forgive you, and you are welcome. Like, that's fucking beautiful, man. That's like just humanitarianism. That's got nothing to do with labels or anything.
I don't say behind me. Yes, leave behind. Victory. Victory today is mine.
Let's praise him today.
By the way, I also love that this is another way the movie's earnest, though. It isn't, on the one hand, actually being like they're all pieces of shit, but they are simultaneously doing mildly exploitative things, like during this amazing redemptive scene, there is that guy on the radio, like, I'm just going to see if I can get it. I think I see a tear from him.
I actually think that is meta commentary about how the media interfaces with religion. Because it also... It's true. Like, we all love that redemptive story, right? Well, how could we share that? How would people know about it if you weren't there to see it? And obviously, This is what the media does. The media exploits these moments that are that are earnest and that are organic, and they add that level of artifice.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, the same guy, remember on the radio earlier when he's like going through the whole rules of what you can't do, like you said. Then at the end, he's like, we've got to get some like, some fundraising going on. Something mad like that. Like, again, it's always baked in there. But what I love about it is it's not that they're all total frauds. It's that, like, why don't do both? Why don't we do some religious shit and then also make some money too? It's like, it's actually quite an honest sort of, like, that is everyday way of thinking, in it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It doesn't flinch away from some of the spikier aspects to just the reality of running a church.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't pretend like they're all just got totally altruistic and they take no money for themselves.
I nearly forgot I'm wrong. That quitting school because I didn't like recess is not the best line in the movie.
Yes.
The best line in the movie is when he goes to try and win his church back in that suit. And they go, well, when it comes to voting, they'll all see that you put that $50 bill in the collection plate. And he goes, it was a $100 bill, man. That's the best line. That is the best line because it shows the fucking, just the inherent pettiness that he can't quite escape.
What happened, Sonny?
I'm no longer your local pastor, is what it is.
You sure showed him with that $50 bill. Praise God, I sure like that.
Here's a $100 bill.
By the way, even that scene also shows kind of what the movie's about. Because think about the premise. If people forget the story order, he's already secretly on some like hostile takeover in Wall Street, being voted out of his church.
Voted out of a church, bro.
I know. The church that he started has been given to his like estranged wife and this douchebag. Even the worse, he has to be like a youth pastor. I want a baseball bat this motherfucker in Minecraft Roblox, obviously. Even I hate this guy. He's so smug and young, and he's even doing that thing I hate as well. This is where, for one second, I align with potential drunk, like fucking delinquent fathers, where it's like that whole thing, like, "Whoa, is everything okay here?" Like, who the fuck are you, pal? I'm the father.
That is
even I'm feeling
way.
that righteous indignation. Monty, I don't even have kids, so anyway. But it's the whole scene where when he goes back in, right? Logically, they should just be like, "You're voted out, get out." But because he comes right in the moment when they're getting all the like fervor going and they're getting that singing, he just vibe checks them all, bro. He literally dances his way in, gets on stage, does some like Godfather 2, like Fredo, like shit on the guy he's about to wreck later, the fucking youth pastor, does the whole thing with the money. And actually, as you see, he chooses not to take advantage because he has to skip town. But actually, like, he basically could already have started another bloody church there. This guy has mad charisma. It's nuts.
Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. And look, just to start winding down.
He just mogs the shit out of them all, and his wife's even playing the organ or whatever. Oh,
yeah, exactly, dude.
And as you say, that's the moment where you know the heart of this movie, because as soon as when he's ever dressed up to the nines, you could easily go into the full, he's a con man there, of course. He even looks like it when he's got that fucking white suit. It's marvelous, isn't it? You're just ready for some crazy shit to come out of his mouth, of course.
So yeah, for me, probably the best Dostoevsky movie that has nothing to do with Dostoevsky.
Good call.
Right,
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's definitely got that Crime and Punishment vibe,
Yeah.
and just the meditative nature of it is really amazing. Now it's the segment where we have to do the Roger Ebert review.
Okay.
Right. So
which side did he come down
well,
on? I think it's implied he's a Robert Duvall fan, though, isn't he? By the way, I have learned about Roger Ebert. He's also mad, but if he just likes an actor, magically their films are all good. I know it's weird how that works, isn't it, Roger?
Yeah. Here we go.
It's only David Lynch he hates, apparently.
4 stars. 4 stars.
Okay, that's the maximum rate.
Yeah.
Okay.
4 out of 4 for him. And he says, I'll just read you the summary at the end. Many of the scenes develop naturally instead of along the lines of obligatory cliches. A confrontation with his wife, for example, doesn't end as we think it might. A face down with a redneck racist played by Billy Bob Thornton develops along completely unexpected lines. The Apostle EF is not easy to read. Duvall's screenplay does what great screenwriting is supposed to do and surprises us with additional observations and revelations in every scene. Perhaps it's not unexpected that Duvall had to write, direct, and star in this film and then round up all of the financing himself. There aren't that many people in the film industry gifted enough to make such a film, and fewer still with the courage to deal honestly with a subject both spiritual and complex. Simple-minded spirituality is no problem. Consider the market for angels right now. I don't know what that's a reference to at the time he's writing this.
There were a lot of angels movies in the 90s.
Oh, Nick Cage and all that bullshit.
Right.
Yeah, good call.
It even got to like Angels in the
bullshit.
Outfield. It got
Yeah.
so ridiculous for a while. There were
True.
tons of these
That's
fucking
true.
garbage
Okay.
movies in the 90s.
The
I know what you're talking
Apostle
about.
is a lesson in how movies can escape convention and penetrate the hearts of rare characters. This might be his best review yet, guys.
That's a bang on.
Yeah. Worrying times in which we live. That it takes the greatness of Robert Duvall to even, almost like The Preacher, to stop.
He didn't even
fucking-
say anything weird. He was actually right for the right reasons.
Yes, Duvall just put his hand on his shoulder and said, I was a worse writer than you in my time, Mr. Ebert. My taste was worse than yours when I was a young man. And Roger Ebert said, I'm embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. The Holy Ghost is with us, Roger. Write an earnest review.
Are you ready to accept Blue Velvet in your heart? Or whatever it was.
Yeah. Are you ready
I'll
to
never
accept
get
David
that.
Lynch in your heart?
It's just the David Lynch angle that lives rent free in my head. The idea like he could only, wasn't it only like Mulholland Drive he liked or something?
Yes.
Something mad
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, wasn't it? Like, what are you talking about, bro?
Yeah. It was like basically hated on Lynch until Mulholland Drive, which is like all of just the, as we talked about in the Lynch,
yeah,
all
if you
of the
don't
Lynch
like
films
Lynch, it's
just
all the
turned up
things
to
stacked
maximum
together.
Lynch.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's nuts in it. It doesn't make any
Fucking
sense at all.
moron. But anyway, there you go.
So
Roger Ebert was right.
I do want to complain about the end a little bit. I will start by saying something I really liked about the end, which is that in the final scene in the church is that one thing, it's a really subtle detail, but I think is again adds so much interesting psychology to Sonny's character, is that while he's preaching, he has his hand up and he's still wearing his wedding ring. After all this shit, he is still, by the end of this movie, he's slept with another woman. He has murdered somebody. His marriage is over. And yet he is still in his mind in his marriage. Right?
Yeah.
Nobody in town knows he's married, right? He just he blew in from out of town. Nobody even knows his real name. He's just the Apostle EF. And I think that says a lot about who this man is.
He told his real name to Miranda Richardson just before she reconciled with her husband. Said, to call me Sonny. And she said, you can come in and sleep with me on the third date. That's what she said.
That was clearly like a very deliberate choice by Duvall.
Yes.
And it's like this film is full of really interesting details like that because he would have written that way, and when he dressed himself as a director in his costume that day, he would have done that very
I think it's
intentionally.
entirely conceivable he just doesn't believe in the concept of divorce.
Yeah, possibly.
And probably has an idea about marriage that even if I go, slinging dick all around town, Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we're still married. Like, you've got to.
Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he thinks that this is another ward against his own darkness, and that by wearing the ring, he is less likely to do the things that he has.
I mean, it's another element of temptation, isn't it? Which he obviously acknowledges is something he's susceptible to.
Yep.
So I found it very interesting because in my mind, it says that he uses the concept of his marriage, just like he uses the concept of his faith, which is as these magical tools to keep him from doing horrible things, potentially, or to keep him on the right track, right? To keep his mind in the right place. It's a physical reminder that when you look at your hand, you remember it every time, and that other people also know it, right? It's a symbol, I am taken. Yeah. This is not, I shouldn't be doing these things. You should not be doing these things with me. He doesn't take it off to seduce this other woman, right? So anyway, I found that very interesting. Now, for all the layers and nuance of this movie, the ending is really Hollywood hokey. And I'm not talking about the chain gang scene. I did enjoy that. But the concept...
You mean the idea they don't just arrest him and they let him keep doing like the whole church thing? Okay.
Yeah, my God. And Robert Duvall, you could just see that...
And he keeps extending it over. You keep thinking it's going to end every 5 seconds.
It lasts like 20 minutes, man.
I know, it's true. It does last a long time.
And you can see he's like, I'm going to win me an Oscar right now. Here we go. Yeah. Here's the epic scene.
He greets like every person in the church. On the
rest of the
Walter
movie.
Goggins guy on his way out the door has like a conversion of Christianity. Oh, it's pretty over the top. I know what you mean, but and you nailed it by saying that. That was the scene. Like, right, listen, now's when I really go full both barrels. Time to get that motherfucking best acting performance
exactly.
Oscar. I know what you mean. Like, get out, everyone, get out the way. Give me the ball. And he does a shot. He's done some Michael Jordan.
Dude, yes. I could also just imagine him direct. He's like, all right, Walton, now cry.
Yeah, exactly.
Cry for me, Walton. Give me something to work with here, Walton.
I mean, Walton fucking gives him something to work with. I mean, like,
I know.
As a calling card for that guy's talent.
Richard, you don't have to write this film in this way. It's so cheesy. It's like you can just have him get arrested.
You hit the right word. It's hawky. It's hawky. You hit the right word. You hit the right word the first time. It isn't cheesy. Cheesy implies predictability to it all. I don't think that's there. I think it's hawky. I think it has to be. I think if you want to bring the movie together, there's got to be, you can't just have him arrested in the night in the church, not know where he's going. You also can't have him not speak to the congregation directly. You also can't have him not demonstrate how fucking sad he is to be leaving these people behind, this new community. True. You have to show these things. And yes,
Richard,
you could do that in 5 minutes.
Setup.
You
Yes,
could do that in 5 minutes.
Even the setup, though, it's literally his ex-wife is in Texas, and the radio crackles, and it's suddenly his voice from this tiny radio station.
Serendipity. God's done this. Like, God's done that. He's got to get to the place he's meant to be. That's the whole thing. The place he's meant to be is in motherfucking prison, talking to those people on the chain gang, helping.
I just think
prisoners.
We can find better ways to end this
I know
movie.
what Richard means, though, because I also did take it the same way. I actually did take it the way I think the character himself would, which is actually his mission there is over. He got it all up and running. He got the whole church going. He even literally helped fucking pave over racial divide in the community, and also saved like a good man, the first man he met when he came to town, this mechanic guy. Like, it actually is sort of time for Poochie to go back to his home planet. It just is.
Correct.
Yes, but it's just like so funny because it just keeps dragging on and on.
It does last forever, I will say, because he keeps looking at that cop and then just doing it all to the
He's just looking at the cop and he knows what's happening, and then there are more cop cars and they're getting out with all their guns, and you hear all the police.
It is like the Blues Brothers.
He could be armed and dangerous. I'm like, come on, stop.
I do love how many cop cars there are outside eventually.
Well, it's also the call. It's
like
he could be armed and dangerous, but let him finish the speech, please. Come on. We don't need to hear the cop radio. Give me a fucking break. Like, it is.
I mean, it's
not great.
He could be armed and dangerous. He could be.
But Richard, here's the point: is that this actually takes away from the rest of the movie because the rest of it is so subtle, and then they're just like it turns into this weird fucking police situation that feels like ripped out of a crappy Hollywood movie.
I mean, I would rather they shaved off. If I was fixing the movie, and by the way, this is like an 8 out of 10 movie for me, right? If I was fixing this movie, what I would do is I would definitely shave down the end. And
so long.
I would rather have him, tried and going to prison, and just I'd rather have a bit more than a post-credit scene of him on the chain gang.
Yes, and that also felt bad because it was like a throwaway to the credits.
It's like they ran out
when
of time.
I think it's really important.
Yeah, exactly. I think that scene is arguably the most important scene of the last third of the movie, right? So it's like it definitely should be given more prominence. So I agree with you there. The end has problems, but I also think, and this is always important when we talk about movies, does all of what is built up to the end, whether the end is overly long or overly saccharine or silly or whatever or bombastic, whatever it might be, is it earned? Is it earned? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And it is. It's an earned ending. I definitely want to see him go. I don't care if it's 20 minutes long. I don't give a fuck. I want to listen to this motherfucker give his one last sermon to this church that I have watched him build up. I have watched him build a bus. I have watched him paint this fucking church, the walls. I've watched him work in a diner to earn the money to buy the paint. Yeah, he gets it. He gets to do it. So that's how I always feel about the movie. And also as well, listen, it's 20 minutes of Duvall going fucking nuts as an actor. Yes, please. Like, so, yeah, I don't have the same feelings about the ending as you. Like, I would change little bits. I would script doctor it a little bit, chop it down here, add this bit here, make the, epilogue, a bit more focused on. But I mean, like, these are minor criticisms to me, in my opinion.
Did you actually overall like it as a movie, Monty?
Yeah, no. I mean, obviously, I think this is really nuanced, and like I said, it reminds me a lot of Faulkner in very good ways, and I think the character is really interesting. Is this movie worth seeing? Absolutely. Duvall's performance is amazing. I think the psychology of this character, the fact that Duvall also wrote it, means that he can play this role with unusual nuance, and I think it takes a very talented person to write a character this strongly literary and fascinating while also being able to play it. Not too many people can do both of those things, right?
Yeah.
But if you can do both of those things, you have better insight into the character than an actor who couldn't do that, right? And I think that's incredibly important.
Like the just IMDb blurb of what the movie is before we watched it, I remember thinking like, I wonder if this is going to be it. Look, I went in thinking, I'm assuming since Robert Duvall directed, his performance is going to be good, but is this going to be an interesting movie? Like, the premise didn't look that interesting to me. Like, I thought I'd seen this a million times. What, a guy who's like some religious figure goes to a small community, and like that feels like a hackneyed cliche plot, but the way it played out was so different to me. Especially, like I said, the pacing and stuff was really unique, and it made me realize how many movies, because I always tell people I'm really good at guessing what's going to happen, but it's just because I'm really good at pattern recognition. I've just seen a million movies and TV shows, so I know what a good writer or a bad writer might do next. So once I identify what sort of story is, I can usually tell. I couldn't tell with this. Like, every scene sometimes would play out, and I'd be like, wonder what the function of that was actually. Is this leaning into our words? And I was often kind of thrown off. And so what I would say is I actually think this is the sort of movie, despite the fact all the comments suggest otherwise, this is the sort of movie that I think we made this series for.
Yes.
The whole point of Foreplay to me isn't really that these are the four most famous movies in the genre that you've definitely seen, so you don't have to watch them, just listen to us talk about them. I get that you want to hear us talk about old movies you've already seen, because that's like a cool angle, in the same way as we joke we want to know what Roger Ebert thinks about every film, even once when he was dead already. But at the same time, like, I also want it to be where, just like I was for this, you get introduced to a movie you probably never would have watched otherwise, but actually it's like secretly fire, or it's got some element that's really compelling. But with the bazillion movies out there, would you ever get to this on your own? Maybe not. So I think it's kind of cool that people got introduced. Especially, I think it's also so far the best example of Robert Duvall not just in one scene getting to act. He gets the whole movie to fucking showcase his skills on this one.
One of the things people need to be cognizant of when we're doing this arc, and why we want to showcase Robert Duvall's talent, is, as crazy as this sounds, he only won one Oscar, despite being nominated 7 times, right? Right, and remember, he's nominated for things we've covered, like The Godfather and all of that, and Apocalypse Now, which I think we'll probably do at some point. But he won with his first nomination, and that was in 1983. So all of the fantastic late 80s and 90s and early 2000s output this guy did that he was getting nominated for, he never won. He didn't win for this. He didn't win for The Great Santini. He didn't win for A Civil Action. Got nominated for all these motherfucking performances, and it's like, how can a guy this good be like almost like the nearly man of Hollywood? You know, that is a question people need to explore, because I saw a lot of people paying lip service to Robert Duvall when he passed, but not many people actually, I think, have seen his real movies. His real movie isn't The Godfather. His real movie isn't Apocalypse Now. Those are memorable standout roles where he adds texture and quotables. This is a real Robert Duvall movie.
And this movie without his performance is shit. This isn't even a movie without his performance.
No,
right?
I mean, he's inextricably linked.
Isn't he
to
in
it.
like every scene too? It's just he dominates this film.
Yeah. He's inextricably linked to it. Would it be shit? Like if Robert Duvall had like halfway through got cold feet and thought, I can't produce, write, and direct and act, and this is an intense part. I don't know who you would put into a role like this. I don't know who could genuinely do the ups and the downs to this degree, who would have been a contemporary of Robert Duvall in 1996 when this was being filmed. I don't know who it would be. Suggestions in the chat, perhaps. But this just feels like, you know, that the way he does the mania that comes from genuinely believing in the Lord, and the hype, preaching, to quiet conversations with God in a bedroom, to whispering to his ex-wife, trying to, you know, it's a masterclass in range, and you know, yeah, absolutely should have had. This is potentially the biggest Oscar robbery of all time.
That also reminds me, another thing we didn't mention was it has those almost like Terrence Malick-esque moments where there'll just be someone, he'll be looking contemplatively, like, by the way, a beautiful scene in the south, like a beautiful orange ochre sunset coming down, like the atmosphere's cool, and it'll have, you know, someone speaking lightly over the top, like his wife saying something, and something from the Bible or something, like, but there is like a Malick-esque thing of it, like it has a reflective component. It's quite artistic, actually, considering the material's very much about just poor people and what their lives are like. It's also got like an artistry to it as a film, I think, as well.
I mean, cool. put it this way: if you imagine it like something, like, okay, so let's take Duvall out and let's just have it be a story about a community that a preacher comes to, and you film it like Nashville or something like that. I don't think it will be a shit movie. I just think it wouldn't be a great movie, and I think it is. I think it touches upon greatness simply because of Robert Duvall. I think he elevates it absolutely, but you know, I think it's a profoundly interesting and powerful movie, particularly if you know, aren't used to it. Like there'll be an entire generation of people who listen to this podcast who have never seen like an earnest exploration of what Pentecostal religion can look like, how important it could be to communities. You know, all the stuff that gets served up about the South these days is, if you're religious, you're a fraud. If you're white, you're racist. You know, and it's if you're a Republican, you're evil. And it's like, guys, it's way more fucking. There's so much more texture to like,
especially Richard, because like we're talking about with this movie, the other thing that people do when they do a reductive reading like that is they imply you yourself believe you're secretly evil, but you get away with it because you're Republican. That as a Christian, you know it's all fake. No, at least give the person the fucking theory of mind that they actually believe. At least you can have your own interpretation. You can think it's wrong, whatever, misguided, but at least give them like the fucking. At least allow them to actually believe they could be honest in saying they believe it.
Yeah, and
that's quite a bold move,
and that's what I mean. And it's like, this is what I always say: you don't need to ever you don't need to lay it on thick. People are inherently flawed. All you ever have to do, if you want to get this is the irony of like creating nuance. All you have to do is just think about, you know, yourself or a friend. You know, you think about the good, you think about the bad. We've all done bad things. We've all done good things. We've been on the right side of arguments, the wrong side of arguments. We believed in some bullshit because we were deceived. We believed in some bullshit because we weren't fucking deceived. We just believed in some bullshit because we were ignorant. We've also believed in something and been proven, you know, absolutely correct. We were right the whole time when everyone was telling us we were wrong. We've all had these common experiences. The problem is Hollywood has no faith in the audience. And so there is no nuance in storytelling anymore. They just need to give you caricatures. Here's a caricature. There isn't any caricatures in this movie. Everyone's complicated. Even like his ex-wife, for instance. You know, she herself is engaging in infidelity, no doubt after he's done it many, many times. But also, you know, she subtly implies abuse. But I also don't think, right up until the point he domes her new beau, I don't think she has any real malice towards him. I don't think that.
By the way, I don't know about you, but even when he did that call where he didn't say anything and she guesses it's possibly him, there was even almost like a concern in that. Like I didn't take that as like she's like terrified. There was almost like she almost wanted him to just say like, "Oh, like can I come back?" or something weird like that.
Yeah, there was this weird pregnant pause in the scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, that's just I hate it. I hate that there's this.
It's just refreshing that it's like an earnest movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
It genuinely is.
I hate that there's an entire section of American people that are unfairly maligned and unfairly represented because of how movies are made. And I wish more people could explore the modern South with like a fresh set of eyes. You know, like that's just how I feel about it. I might have lived in Atlanta, which is a very, obviously it's overwhelmingly blue in the city, but you don't have to go too far to find the exact type of places and the exact type of communities. And I've been, like I say, fucking Alabama, Mississippi, Talladega. I've been all of these types of places. And I'm sad I don't live there. For me, like living in Atlanta, that was the best time of my life. It felt like home real quick. I loved all of those people. So yeah, I hope people can just embrace this movie, see it as earnest. Don't worry, there is no rug pull coming. Southerners are indeed people too. Who knew Hollywood, right? And it's just a fantastic exploration of the parameters of faith and how even the greatest sinner can be redeemed by something beyond themselves.
All right, well, that'll do it for The Apostle. We will see you guys next week for A Civil Action,
Another banger.
and then Open Range after that. See you then.